Journalists have been uncovering all kinds of gems about new Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, both from her past comments and what she's been doing on Facebook. This latest one has her casually flirting with some 9/11 trutherism. Let's take a listen to that.
But we had witnessed 9/11, right? We had witnessed 9/11, the terrorist attack in New York, and the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania, and the so-called plane that crashed into the Pentagon. It's odd. There's never any evidence shown for a plane in the Pentagon. But anyways, I'm not going to dive into the 9/11 conspiracy.
I actually would give anyone a pass for buying into one big conspiracy theory at some point in their lives. Mm-hmm. But like, she believes all of them. She believes 9/11 trutherism, apparently. She was a Parkland truther. She was a Sandy Hook truther. There was one that she seemed to like invent about like a Jewish ray in the desert or something totally insane that I've never even heard of before. Not to mention, of course, all the QAnon crap. Like, this woman is completely crazy. And yet I think it was Chris Wallace that pointed out Liz Cheney is getting more like visible pushback from within the Republican Party than this person.
Yeah, well, what she has on top of all of that is an undying fealty to Trump. And that is basically what trumps everything, so to speak. And that's why I think this is going to be much more of a preview of the future. And there are a lot of establishment Republicans who want to say, like, Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't speak for the Republican Party and all that. I completely disagree. I actually think she speaks for much more of the Republican Party than any of them do. And I'm not putting a moral judgment on that. I'm just, very clearly showing you what the state of the race is. And the way that we know this is that Trump himself, let's put this up there on the screen, called Marjorie Taylor Greene amidst all of this and said that she has his full support. That's right ahead of a meeting that she has scheduled with Kevin McCarthy. I believe that this particular meeting has been prompted over like a past endorsement of violence against Nancy Pelosi or just whatever. There's too much, honestly, to count. There's like the Parkland thing, Sandy Hook, 9/11. I can't even keep track of everything that is going on. But this is a huge problem. This is the civil war now within the GOP, which is that even people who would be inclined to like disavow Marjorie Taylor Greene are going to be on the wrong side of now Trump himself, who is the single most popular figure in the Republican Party. We have seen Mitt Romney and Rob Portman and others go after her. But, Mitt Romney, the poll came out in Utah. Almost half of Utah Republicans are not. He has a higher approval rating amongst Utah Democrats than he does Utah Republicans. And then Rob Portman obviously is retiring. And I just see this playing out over the next couple of years in so many different ways, which is that the people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, yes, believe all this crazy stuff, are also the biggest Trumpists who are within the party. And Trump, because all he does is measure loyalty to himself as the barometer of whether you're good or not, is going to keep them solidly popular. And then at the same time, the only critics are like Mitt Romney and Rob Portman, who have no credibility within the GOP. I saw, for example, that George W. Bush may go and campaign for Liz Cheney in Wyoming. I'm like, that's a negative. That would guarantee more Republicans come out just to say, screw you, W. So yeah. It's the crisis of public confidence that the Republican elite has zero credibility with its base. And the only people with credibility really is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that's a problem.
I mean, she is a crazy person. And like, let me just be clear about the Liz Cheney. I'm not trying to defend Liz Cheney. Like,
right, exactly.
I can't stand Liz Cheney's politics. She's a warmonger. If you want to criticize her on that, fine. But that's not the thing that she's taking heat over. She's taking heat over the fact that she dared to be like, hey, you know what? President inciting an insurrection at the Capitol was really not a great look for a president. And hey, we should probably do something to make sure we don't repeat that again. That's what she's taking heat over, not her many like terrible issue positions that have been destructive and damaging to the American public. And that's the other thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene is that her crazy conspiracy theories and total Trump fealty is all that being on the populist right in Washington has come to mean, because her politics are terrible. Like, she buys in all this like socialism is coming to destroy the country, insane crap. So it's not like there's even if you wanted to ignore all of the insanity and incitement and all of that, you don't even have anything like to be positive on the other side. What's like, there's nothing good about this person whatsoever. There's nothing you can work with. There's nothing redeemable. And yet this is the emblem of what Trumpism has collapsed down to. Yeah. So in terms of political ramifications, look, Mitch McConnell is very worried about how these next Senate elections are going to go. I won't be the first one to make comparisons to when they were nominating people like Sharon Angle and Todd Akin and Richard Murdoch and all these other people who lost incredibly winnable races in relatively red or swing states. You nominate someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene in a state, even like Ohio, as much as it is shifted to the right, you're going to lose. Right? There's a very hard limit to this type of politics. And so they just keep pushing themselves in a further and further sort of more fringe corner as this goes. Yeah, no, that's basically what I think is going to happen over the next 4 to 5 years is you're going to have, because remember, people like her will win the primary. You know, they will win the primary because they're the most popular amongst the actual Republican base. But then that's that ever shrinking, especially when people get torn off with the Capitol riots and more, who either become Democrats or just like exit the party in a general election. That's not going to work out so well. And what did we just talk about in your radar, Krystal? Who's the most popular politician in the state of Georgia? It ain't her. It's Warnock. And behind that is Ossoff. And guess who has a negative approval rating in that state? Trump, along with Brian Kemp. So, you know, congratulations to all these people. They've actually managed to turn Georgia not just blue, but like deep blue in the matter of 2 years. So I actually want to congratulate their political acumen. Well, and if I can pause on that point for a minute, because I think it's important. Kemp has higher approval ratings in Georgia than Trump does. Yes. Overall, right. With the general elect doing better than Trump is. But if you look at Republicans, it's the polar opposite situation. Kemp is in big trouble with Republicans. Trump is wildly popular. And this shows you the Republican Party dilemma in a nutshell. So next time there's a primary in Georgia, you're going to end up with someone who Republicans may love, the base may absolutely adore, and the general public is like, why in the world would you think that we would vote for this person? So Trump has just over the past 6 years, 4 years, 5 years, however you want to measure it, he has increasingly sort of like solidified the base around just him and made it meet everything just centered around fealty to him. And that has increasingly over time diminished the Republican Party and diminished the Republican Party's appeal to anything beyond the sort of smallest hardcore base. And I think that trend is ultimately just going to continue here. Yeah, I agree, which is that people were willing to stick with him. But the riots actually were the one thing that paired everybody back. And I think it's going to be a big problem. Yep. All right. More rising for you after this.